Reptile Expos are amazing. It's where I got a lot of my animals, including this guy here. So today, let's go over why Reptile Expos aren't terrible. My name's Adam, this is Pikachu, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Nothing in this world is perfect, and neither are Reptile Expos. But I really do think Reptile Expos offer way more good to the community than they offer bad. And let's just go over a few points, and yes, I'm not trying to fool anybody. This definitely was influenced by a much larger, probably better YouTube channel about reptiles that was talking about why Reptile Expos are awful. But I really like that channel, so I just like to present those points in a positive light and explain why I think they're awesome. So stop wasting time. First things first. I live in Canada. The Reptile Expos that I go to are owned by the same company. That's all that's available here in Ontario. Before the world shut down, we had one every 6 weeks-ish, sometimes once a month. So I would go to, 9, 10 a year, and they're all basically by the same company that with the same rules. The Toronto Reptile Breeders Expo is the big one here. It's in September. Guys like Dave Kaufman, Brian Cusco, and even Brian Barchuk have been to these expos, so they are the real deal. And with that said, I can only draw from this small sample size, so this is what I've seen. Reptiles are contained, and yes, they are contained in these small containers, but in the video that I'm kind of responding to, he was talking about how there was like frogs everywhere and lizards like under his table and stuff, and that might be the way it is at these kind of like expos in the US maybe, but I know here for sure I have never seen anything loose. I did see a loose sparrow once. There was a loose sparrow who flew in the front door, but I've never seen loose reptiles just wandering around. There's never like these animals that are just flying by your feet or anything like that. Everybody is super responsible at these expos, and the Deli Cup thing, I know that's a sticking point. We'll get to that in a second. And I would like to say, from my experience, everybody at these expos who is vending is a good person. I mean, there might be some bad apples there, but it's not like an epidemic of bad apples. I don't personally know anybody. I haven't had any bad experiences with people being dishonest or rude or anything like that. And in the video, like he was talking about felons. I don't know of any felons that are showing up and selling reptiles, but neither here nor there. Deli Cups. This is like the big thing by people often and sometimes rightly dislike Reptile Expos. Here, usually a Reptile Expo is on Sunday. These shows are going to be for one day, and you're going to get people maybe from the province over, Quebec, but mostly they're from local places. They're from Ontario, and sure, you might have, say, a 6-hour drive from Ottawa to Toronto, or 5 hours, or however long it is, and those reptiles might be stressed out being in those containers, but they're in those containers for 1 or 2 days. The Reptile Breeders Expo is all weekend, and there are people that come from across the country, so maybe it is possible. And by the way, I know I'm talking about Canada a lot. This does apply to expos in the United States or Belgium or the Netherlands or anywhere in the world, really. The point is, these reptiles will sometimes stay in containers for that one time a year for 4 days. That is a little bit much, in my opinion, right? 1 day to travel, 2 days at the expo, 1 day to travel home. That's a little bit much, but most of the time at these smaller shows, which are 1 day, you're going to see reptiles in these Deli Cups for 1 day. They're packed up, brought to the expo, brought home, or 2 days if they're coming from far, packed up, shown at the expo, and then when they get home, they unload them. So 2 days. The way that I would just kind of like to justify this is if you ship a reptile, they're in a box, who knows what's happened to it, and that reptile is going to be in that box for likely a day or 2 days. Some people pack them up the night before, go to FedEx the next day to drop them off at the depot, and then they're delivered the next day. So they're actually in Deli Cups for 3 days a lot of the time. So to have a reptile in a Deli Cup for 2 days isn't optimal, but if you're doing a really good job and you have high turnover with the animals that you produce and you're selling them, that animal will likely, if it's going to a forever home, never have to go through that again. And if you found them a really good owner, well, I mean, they had to be in that Deli Cup to find the owner. I guess what I'm trying to say is here, if you're against them being in Deli Cups for 2 days, you're also against shipping, and I don't think any of us are really against shipping reptiles. It's part of the hobby. Another reason that these reptile expos are not terrible, in fact, they're awesome, is just because everyone kind of follows the rules, or most people. Now, I'm not going to say it's a utopia and everybody follows the rules and reads I know that there are some shady things that can happen at expos, but from what I see, and I've been going to expos for almost 10 years now, most people really do what they're asked to do and don't really step outside the guidelines of what they're supposed to be doing. Our expos are run by a dude named Grant. I like this guy. He's very nice. He introduced himself when I had almost no followers or subscribers or an audience at all, and he said, hey, film everything that you want, film everything that you see on these tables, everything that you see here, I have no problem showing the world. And to me that says this guy really believes in what he's doing and really believes in that these people that he lets into his expos that to vend are following the rules. So I don't really agree that there's a lot of people who aren't following rules. If that was the case, then if you saw a bunch of people with cameras and you were the guy who was liable, you'd probably be, go over here, don't film this. And I never got that at all. I film at every expo I ever go to. And that just further attests to the fact that it's really good people and it is the best of the hobby gathering at these expos and a lot of positivity. The thing I like about the expos here and the ones that most of the bigger expos that I've talked to people about in the US and in Europe as well is there's no monopolization. So it's not like if you breed rodents or insects, you're not allowed to sell at these expos. I've never been to an expo like that because, for example, an expo might have an affiliation with, I don't know, a mealworm company, something like that. I've personally never seen that. Every expo I've ever been to has had different people selling different things. There's no, this is the only guy who sells ball pythons, this is the only guy who sells mealworms, this is the only guy that sells rats. I've never seen that ever. It's always kind of like, what are you bringing to the table? Are you a good person? Are you gonna follow the rules? Go nuts. Do whatever you gotta do. As long as the animals are healthy and you're being honest to the customer. And that is my next point. People are generally pretty honest, and I haven't seen very many of these issues where animals are in poor health. You know when you go into like a PetSmart or Petco and you see a bunch of dead betas in the beta section? I have never once seen a dead animal on a Reptile Expo table. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Reptiles sometimes get sick and drop dead. I know that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying I've never seen it. Very few times ever have I questioned the health of an animal. I've never seen, say, for example, spider morph ball pythons. We talked about it last week in the live stream. I don't personally buy them and I don't breed them and I don't really like the breeding of them. But if I see them on a table for sale, I've never seen them with such a bad wobble that it is sad to look at. It seems like we're kind of policing ourselves in this community, and I really love that. So the point I'm making here is I've never seen really terrible health to the point where it was alarming to me. Maybe an animal that was a little bit skinny, but there's a reason. You talk to the guy, hey, what's going on here? Oh, he was a slow starter. He's been pounding meals into him, whatever. If he's being honest or not, I personally can't tell, but from my experience, everyone I've ever done business with has been honest. If I ask a question about husbandry for an animal that I've researched, but for example, I just don't know a certain thing or can't remember off the top of my head, it's always honesty. I've never had someone sell me a berm and say it's a ball python. I've never had someone sell me a ball python and tell me it can live in a 20-gallon enclosure its whole life. I've never had that happen to me personally, and all I can really do is go by my experience in the last 10 years. In the integrity as well. Now there are some wild-caught animals you'll find at Reptile Expos, same with here. And I'm not a big fan of wild-caught. I understand it. That's a different video topic. I can make it if you want me to. But I've never seen people flipping animals to the point where it's so obvious that it's unappealing to look at. And what I mean by this, I've never seen anyone buy something at this table, go over to their own table and sell it for more money. I have never seen that ever. Never seen that. So I don't think that there's a big issue or epidemic of these flippers, and not saying that buying an animal for one price and taking good care of it and selling it for another is totally wrong. There are ways to do it the correct way, and I don't think there's anything wrong with those ways, but I've never seen it as blatant as that at an expo. So I think that people are generally honest, and most of what you see at these expos are things that people have put their heart and soul into breeding, their own blood, sweat, and tears, literally, into breeding these animals, and they're trying to give you the best product that they've made. And when I say product, I don't mean like they're pumping them out. I just mean what they're selling, the good that they're selling on their table is the best quality that they could have produced, which is giving the best life to that animal. And to be honest, I think the honesty at these expos have been almost astounding, how honest people have been, in my experience anyway. No one's ever lied to me and said, hey, this guy feeds on frozen thawed and you get home and it only eats live, or this guy's a het and it doesn't prove out. I've never had those issues in my experience. I know that they happen, but I just think the general consensus is that people are trying to make the hobby better, and they're trying to do better. So you're not going to see a lot of these, bait and switch type things with these animals. And further to that, a lot of the times the owners of these booths are kind of like berated with questions from the staff. So I never see a staff make up an answer, or I shouldn't say never, just rarely do I ever see a staff make up an answer. Hey, how much is this one and what is the morph on it? I can't really quite read it. They look down, I don't know. Hey, Doug, I don't know, whatever the guy's name is who owns the booth. Hey man, can you come over here and talk to this guy? And most of the time, the owners of these booths, the guys who are running the booths, they are really excited to talk to you about their animals. So I think, you're getting really good advice and generally an honest opinion when you go to these expos. It's kind of like a breeding ground for positivity. Another big one, mites. Holy cow, I get it. I totally get it. There is a reptile shop that I used to go to in my area, and I brought home mites from that place a few times. So this doesn't mean that it is every expo, but these reptile shops often go to these expos. So I know for sure there are mites at expos, and it's terrible. And it is something that I'd like to see policed out as much as possible. If you know that you have an animal who is sick, mites or a respiratory infection, whatever, don't bring it to a freaking expo if you're a vendor. Please. I don't care that you need to get rid of it. Otherwise, I don't care. You're going to be hurting someone else's collection. To sell an animal that you know has mites to someone that you know has other animals, you're putting all those animals at risk. So it's a disgusting act. With that said, at a reptile expo, I've taken home dozens of animals from reptile expos over the years. I have never gotten mites from an expo. So I've been lucky, I get it, but there are ways that you can just get around this. If you buy, say, a ball python at an expo, you should be quarantining your animal anyway. I did a video about quarantining right here if you want to watch it. So you take it to the quarantine area, which is away from the rest of your collection. Yes, you might have mites on your clothes. Just put your clothes in the wash when you get home. And every bit of supplies that I have, I make sure I either wash off, and I keep that in the quarantine area as well and look it over. So I get it. It is a real concern, but I think that the benefits of reptile expos far outweigh the risk that you might get mites. And even if you do bring home mites, there are ways to not spread it to the rest of your collection. I think that in the difference between a reptile expo and, say, a pet shop who doesn't really know much and their prime objective is just to sell to absolutely anybody, is you don't see that at expos very much. At shows, reptile shows, I don't really see people impulse buy pushing. What I mean is people see the sign, come on in, and they're just pushing up. Yeah, a Burmese python's a great starter snake. I've never seen that. Usually, in fact, I've been quizzed. I've had it where, hey, can I buy this animal? Sure, no problem. Hey, do you happen to know what the humidity is for blue-tongued skink? They're literally quizzing me to make sure I'm giving it a good home. And I've seen that a lot more than, hey man, you should buy this. Hey, I don't really have the space for a carpet python, sorry. Nah, it's fine, you can stick them in a tub. I've never had that happen. I'm sure it does happen, but in the vast majority, the people who are around in mainstays, you don't see that. Those people weed themselves out, and the owner of the expos here, I know, wouldn't stand for that. So I don't think this is a big issue. And that's why I love expos, because people are actually genuine and honest and want to help their fellow reptile keeper. So I think this whole video I wanted to make positive, and I'm just attacking negative things that people might say. And to be clear, the video that I'm kind of sort of responding to, I think that it's Go Herping, by the way, that's the channel. I think that he did the video for a good reason. He's not trying to bring down the reptile hobby or anything like that. He has an experience with expos, and I have a different experience completely. I love expos. I don't want to see them go away. The way that they're run here is the way that they should be run. So I think instead of talking about how reptile expos are bad, collectively as a community, we should talk about how to make reptile expos better. And I think that we have really good expos here. So that's my opinion on reptile expos. They're not horrible. They are awesome. I absolutely love them. And with that said, by the way, I have never made $1 at a reptile expo, so I have no vested interest in them. I've spent lots of money at them, but I have never made $1, so I'm not defending them because there's a money in it for me. There's not. So anyway, there you go. I want to say thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are freaking awesome and contribute to me spending money at reptile expos. I really appreciate it. You get discounts on the merch, these videos early. I actually just got some new reptiles today that have been up on Patreon. So if you want to see extra stuff in my collection that the regular channel doesn't know about for as little as $1 a month, you can be a Patreon supporter. I'd really appreciate it. And so would Diamond, who hasn't bit my ear yet. So With that said, hit like and hit subscribe, and I'll see you on Monday.